We learned some very interesting details about Derrick Henry, both on the trade front for the Baltimore Ravens last season and what he does to prepare for each and every new year. We talk about that and so much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens. We are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And as always, thank you so much for being here today on this Purple Friday, making us your first listen each and every single day, free and available on all podcasting platforms. So in video form on YouTube, you can like and subscribe. In audio form, follow along, subscribe over there as well for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back with us in the Purple Friday slot is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. Q. We are 1 day away from veterans reporting to Owings Mills for training camp. Again, as we talked about last week with the rookies, it has been a long process to get here, a lot of offseason talk, but football is finally officially back on the horizon.
No more speculation, no more thinking about what ifs. It is going to be laid out in front of us. We're going to be able to evaluate. We're going to be able to see. And yes, that is called training camp. And then when the evaluations are done, the team is set, we'll have the regular season. We're going to have a ton of fun. But yes, let the good times roll.
And it's exciting. I know rookies already there, quarterbacks and injured players also report, but we're getting that last wave in here. And hopefully we do not have any storylines to talk about with guys holding out or missing camp, which I don't think we do. I think we've covered the bases and there's not going to be any of that. But it's exciting because we know this Ravens team, how disappointing it was last year. But they now have a chance to right that ship this year, almost like a 2012 to 2013 timeline. Now, one of the very interesting things here, Q, that is going to be the topic of the conversation, at least for this first segment, is we're always getting tidbits here and there about some of the intricacies that goes on behind the scenes, whether it be for potential trades or signings or even just how a player prepares for the year. And Derrick Henry, who obviously came over to Baltimore here for this season, there were a couple of juicy tidbits that came out yesterday that, I mean, we just have to talk about them today. And it was Dan Pompey of The Athletic starting off with the potential trade. Now, this was talked about in October. You and I talked about this, of a potential Henry trade to the Ravens last season. Cole Jackson, Spencer Schultz reported that there was a deal in place for the Ravens to acquire Henry from Tennessee, but the higher-ups in Tennessee ended up rejecting that deal. Now, nothing came of it at the time, and it wasn't really talked about ever again. But Dan Pompey of The Athletic yesterday ended up confirming that, saying that there was a deal between Eric DeCosta and Titans general manager Ran Carthon, and the compensation for this would have been a fourth-round pick that would potentially turn into a third-round pick if certain production stipulations were met. Now, what Dan Pompey said here was the others in the Tennessee hierarchy, they were not on board with the deal. Henry played out the season in Nashville. There were rumblings in October that they didn't really want Henry's Tennessee legacy to be tarnished for what could have been a very low-level draft pick. So if this was a fifth or a sixth-round pick, you're like, okay. But Henry left after the offseason anyway. There is something to say about legacy and just him finishing out the season, leaving on his own terms. In that final game of the year, he had 153 yards against Jacksonville. They upset Jacksonville to win. He gave a speech on the field. It was a big grand exit for Derrick Henry, which was a feel-good moment for everybody in Tennessee. But this was a huge piece of news that dropped yesterday, because I know a lot of people are thinking, well, if they had Derrick Henry, the Ravens, in that AFC Championship game, just how different could it have been?
It's so weird because I know we as Raven fans talk about the AFC Championship game and, you know, the running of the football and all that. But I really think that if Derrick Henry was here, it would have been a different scenario. It would have been a one where Steve Spagnuolo would have had to account for him. We saw what Buffalo did, to Kansas City and the way they were running up and down the football field. It'd have been a great change of pace. I mean, heck, if Keaton Mitchell was healthy, I mean, it's a game changer. It's in the discussion. So, yes, running the football would have been amazing. As to Derrick Henry and the trade and the higher ups and all that, like, isn't it interesting how optics always matters when it comes to general managers and ownership, or even some coaches too? It's interesting to me that, yeah, you say you don't get caught up in the outside noise of the fandom, but technically this proves that you do. And I think when the AJ Brown trade happened, that general manager got fired because of the way in which AJ just went off and blew it up in Philly. So yeah, optics matter, and it's just it's interesting to me. You would think that, hey, here's our philosophy, here's what we're all about. Let's do what's best for the organization. But then you got the ego of ownership, and they want to poo-poo your vision. They will poo-poo your vision, so their egos can be massaged.
Yeah, and I know this kind of also attributes to Q that all these general managers, but in particular Eric DaCosta, they are always working to try to find something that can benefit their team. And I know after the Ravens didn't make a move at last year's deadline, it was all this, oh, well, why didn't he try harder? Why didn't he go out there and get some? Well, he had something, he had something down the pipeline. But again, sometimes you can agree to something and then there's something that falls through right at the end. And so for Baltimore, look, I think Henry would have definitely made a difference in terms of the Ravens and how their season went. Maybe, regular season, they still were dominant even without him. But obviously, once the AFC Championship rolled around and that whole playoff thing happened, we've talked about it. It's, well, now Derrick Henry is here, and there's no way the Ravens run the ball 6 times with the running backs in the championship game now that Henry's involved. Well, if he was there last year, we would have had, if they had run Derrick Henry 6 times in the championship game, the conversation would have been elevated like 10 different levels, because that is Derrick Henry we are talking about. But at the end of the day, I guess Henry's here. They have an opportunity to right that ship if they so choose to, which I hope that they do, and I hope they have the opportunity to do. But it is crazy because the Ravens, they got him for nothing, essentially. I know it was a little later and he could have helped last season, but all in all, it is interesting to see. I agree with you, Q, how these things can change how either deals are made or teams go out there and acquire guys, because it's not just as simple as 2 GMs agreeing and that's the be all end all. There are other hoops you got to jump through. Now, the other part of the Derrick Henry article, by the way, it was a great long form article by Dan Pompey and went into a ton of detail about Henry as a person, as a player. But in this was a blurb about Henry and his yearly body maintenance. And his financial advisor ended up saying that Derrick Henry, he estimates Henry spends around $240,000 a year on his body. Now, I'm going to read through some of this stuff, so bear with me, but that says it includes employing a personal chef. He eats no fried foods, gluten, dairy, artificial sugars. That's all out. During the season, doesn't eat his first meal until 4 or 5 p.m. He eats only one other meal around 8 p.m. And when he does eat, he consumes, in the article, it says, nearly enough for a pride of lions. And Henry ended up saying he probably eats around 3 chicken breasts, some rice, some broccoli, some gluten-free pancake, scrambled eggs, diced potatoes, home fries, some steak. That's a lot of food right there. And then you also hear him saying before practice, he might have some kale, avocado, bananas, get something in the system. He also takes some IV fluids to contain a shot of vitamin E and some other nutrients in there as well. Some, the intermittent fasting, which is actually become a very interesting way of being able to kind of manage your body. But Q, obviously you being in the physical performance space, how does his routine look to you? And all that food, man, I'm blown away by all that.
It's so interesting because when I look back at my career and what I learned as far as how to take care of my body, Roger Craig, the great 49er running back, had 1,000 yards receiving, 1,000 yards rushing. He literally transformed the way in which guys would practice and work out and all those things. He was a part of the Minnesota Vikings when I was there my rookie season. One of the things he said to me, he's like, Q Niski, man, you got to take care of what takes care of you. So when he said that, it was interesting because in my mind, I had no idea what it meant. And as the season went on, I started to realize, man, my body is wearing down, and the certain foods that I eat, they're sticking to me, and they're just not really beneficial for me. So I started down a path of, being better as far as food and nutrition and longevity, way back when. Fast forward to today, and there are certain guys like Derrick Henry who are more than willing to invest into what takes care of them, their body. And so from a running back aspect of things, I think it's brilliant that he, in fact, does the extra to help himself recover. Those low-level inflammatory foods, those seed oils, and all of the different processed foods that you can consume, it has a cumulative effect. And there's no way you should be sitting there thinking that it's okay, I can eat it, I'm young. For him, it's like, man, for every 240,000, number one, it's a tax write-off. But then number two, from just the out and out playing and getting more money, it's an investment well worth it. And then after you finish playing, you're going to be in a position where you can enjoy life. You're not sitting there crippled because you don't have the capability of doing the little simple things like getting up out of a chair, opening up a jar, playing with your kids, potentially having the opportunity to play with your grandkids. All those things. It all matters. It all builds up. And people are foolish if they think that, well, it's for him. No, it's for all of us. But at the same time, I love it that he's doing what he needs to do to have that longevity of his career.
And we know Derrick Henry has entered his 30s, which I know for a lot of people is that scary old age for running backs of 30. But I have been in awe, really, even before he came to Baltimore. But I've talked about it a ton since he has gotten here. His carry load has been incredible, dating back to how Tennessee used him. I mean, you look at these carry totals, these last 5 years, 303 carries, 378 carries, 349 carries, 280 carries. In those seasons, he missed, I believe, 2 total games in those 4 years. The only season in this past that 5-year stretch was in 2021. He got injured, played 8 games, only had 219. And I say only 219 carries. That's still a lot of carries. But now that this has come out and we understand how Derrick Henry does take care of his body, he is able to take on that workload because of him and what he's been able to do, taking care of, you said, Q, what takes care of him. So I love that perspective, especially because I don't think the Ravens want to use him as much as he was used in Tennessee, but that will keep him even fresher with the things that he's doing with his body, and that is really important as well.
I just think that when you recognize this, Tom Brady said it really well. When you recognize that this game that you play is a finite game and you want to just get all that you can out of it, you start to see what slows you down, and then you make changes. And for Derrick Henry, the no fried food, well, again, that's oxidative stress that's on your system. It's going to affect your liver. You're going to get that low-level inflammatory responses in your body. It's going to cause your immune system to be compromised, and you're not going to be at your best. If you take care of what takes care of you, then yeah, you get a chance to have longevity. You get a chance to be in a position where it really doesn't matter the workload. I'm having fun. I'm out there practicing. I'm out there being productive on game day. And you know what? You get general managers wanting your services when one team doesn't want you, another team does. And hallelujah, let's go. That's the really cool thing about Derrick Henry and just, you know what, taking care of your body.
Yeah. And, we had Todd Monken. He was asked about him during the Ravens Wired. He said he's a pro's pro. It just seems like it has worked out so well so far. Again, maybe it could have happened earlier if the whole trade thing went through last October. But you know what? He's here now, and we can look forward and move forward with him as a member of the team. Coming up, though, we're talking about which players are ready for bigger roles this year and how they can earn them in training camp states. And we got a lot to get to here on the show. First, the show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle. And level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether in the speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has it covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, the part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. All irons always exclusive supply eBay Guaranteed Fit and available to U.S. customers. And the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's finding jobs, networking, connecting with others. LinkedIn is great. And LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. And to give a month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, might not have the time and resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring as well. Push your job for free on LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. It's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to push your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are back, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher and Qadry Ismail still with you on this Purple Friday. And really appreciate everybody for being here today on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to subscribe video form and audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Now, Q, with training camp on the horizon here, we know that this team is trusting their youth in a big way this season. A lot of guys who maybe didn't have as big of roles last year, they're going to be jumping up and taking either starting spots or key depth positions. And it feels like Baltimore really trusts what they have right now. But in terms of which players are ready for bigger roles, I'm going to start off with your best friend, or at least your new best friend, who you've been talking about on this show for a little while now, and that is Tavius Robinson, who I don't know what the expectation was in terms of him playing last season. I wasn't expecting a ton. I thought it would be more of a developmental year for him. But he comes in, plays a pretty good early down role for them. And to me, I think with that experience under his belt, with Jadeveon Clowney now gone, with the unprovenness of David Ojabo, I think that there is some opportunity for Tavius Robinson, who might not be a name people are thinking about a ton right now, to play an even bigger role than last season and be very effective in it.
I know the reason why I said BFF, and he is now in the QBFF club. It is because of the fact that when you looked at him from the OTA aspect of things, when you looked at him from the minicamp aspect of things, he was flying around. He was like just a man on a mission. And I think because of that, it's easy for me to say, yeah, he's going to take that next step. You got to do it in practice. You got to show up. You got to show up big time. It looks like he's understanding the nuances of the defense. You're going to have a guy like Zach Orr, who has a great outside linebacker, D-line coach in Matt Robinson. I think he is going to flourish under his tutelage. So with that said, yes, Tavius Robinson, that's my dude. He's going to be ready.
I think so too. And kind of on that same wavelength, do you believe that this is the year of David Ojabo? Do you think that he is ready? Health is the big question here, right? Assuming he can stay on the field and stay healthy. Do you think that he is ready for a leap? Or do you think that he's going to need a year to maybe get acclimated fully to the NFL game, seeing as he really hasn't played a ton in the NFL to this point?
It's going to be tough, to be honest with you. Again, you know, if you're taking care of what takes care of you and doing all the things and, you know, preparing yourself for the rigors of football, then you're not going to really be thinking about necessarily your knee or your Achilles and any of the other ligaments that had to been repaired and all that. You're going to be like, all right, cool. I think this is my opportunity to show up and show out. And David Ojabo has, you know, pretty much a bullseye on his chest because of the fact that there are a lot of high expectations. And I think he can do it. I think he can. I think he is poised to do it. It's about showing up and doing it.
Yeah, so hopefully, again, he can stay on the field and stay healthy here. But let's stick with the defensive line, Q. You know, we talked about your best friend. We're going to get to mine now, and that is Mr. Travis Jones, at least the one that I wasn't allowed to say when we actually talked about best friends. I know that I picked Ardarius Washington as my actual best friend, but I'm still putting him. You have Charlie Kohler, and you have Tavius Robinson. I'm taking Travis Jones and Ardarius Washington. So one of my BFFs, Travis Jones, someone who I expect He's been my pick for breakout player of the year forever now for this team in 2024. I expect him to have a bigger role. We're going to see what his role actually is, but we know he is dominant as a run defender. He has incredible pass rush push and is able to be effective in that area as well. He's a two-way player, and I think Baltimore can really use him this year.
It's interesting because you're right. We want him to break out. We want him to do what's necessary because of the fact that they have such a murderer's row of a schedule. And you get to the quarterback, like you're looking at the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allens, the Russell Wilsons of the world, the Joe Burrows of the world. That's a big group. The Jalen Hurts later in the year. Not that I'm saying that he can't, but I'd be curious to see how he kind of gets back on track with his quarterback play, our dude over in Cleveland, because of the fact that he was out. And now, if you look at it, a Travis Jones getting up in the face of all these dudes, it will be awesome for Zach Orr because there's so much you can do when you have upfront pressuring the quarterback, getting them off their spots and off their marks.
Yeah, and we know that Justin Madubuike was their big breakout guy last season. I expect him to have more help around him this season. Now, Michael Pierce, to be fair here, to me, he was the most underrated Raven last season and played exceptional football all season long and was a huge part of that defense, but he doesn't get talked about a ton. And that's a guy that I expect maybe they want to manage the snaps a little bit more as he gets older and keep him fresh as the playoffs go. But again, these guys aren't necessarily one for ones. Each of them bring their own skill set. And that's why the defensive line group was one of my favorite. In fact, it is my favorite on the team because of just how many different guys they have. Now, Trenton Simpson is a guy everybody's talking about, Q. We know it. Patrick Queen leaves. The Ravens, they prepared for this moment. They drafted Simpson last year, and we saw everybody holds on to that Pittsburgh game in Week 18. We saw the flashes of him. Now, I think he is ready. The thing is going to be, how ready is he? I think there will be some growing pains here and there. I don't expect it to be picture perfect for 17 games. But I do think that as we get further and further along in the season, Trenton Simpson will get more comfortable and more comfortable and more comfortable, especially having a guy like Roquan next to him who we know can give you that bump.
High tide raises all ships. That's my dude, Roquan Smith. And you absolutely know Trenton Simpson is going to be out there. Again, reflect back on who is his defensive coordinator, what position did he play, the understanding of him and his strengths and his weaknesses and putting him in position to make plays. He's athletic as all get out. I think with Roquan on the football field, there's not going to be a lot of missed assignments where you're just worrying about Trenton's IQ. I think it's going to be totally fine. I think he's going to be a really good asset as far as covering guys, whether it be tight ends, whether it be guys out of the backfield, something that the previous guy who held that spot had difficulties with. But now we know that he's over in Pittsburgh. We don't even need to say his name, PQ. But anywho, yeah, there's a new sheriff in town, and I appreciate what Trenton Simpson is going to bring to the table for the Ravens defense.
Yeah, I do too. And we know he has that sideline-to-sideline speed. We know he brings that energy. We know he can play a little bit all over the field. So he's a chess piece for this team, and I do expect him to be really good next to Roquan. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, talk about people are talking about is Rashad Bateman right now. That's who everybody's talking about. We have talked about him extensively on this show. I do think he is ready for a bigger role. The thing with him, though, and we have talked about this forever, is staying healthy and establishing a connection. If he can do those two things, I expect him to at least have a career year in terms of what he's been able to do statistics-wise, which I know is not, anything that blows you out of the water. But I think that is the minimum. If he can stay healthy and establish a chemistry with Lamar, he's ready for a role if he can do those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm rooting for him. I think he's done the work. I think he's put in the time. His offseason training has gone well. If you're healthy in your offseason and you're able to go into the season, it just gives you that much more confidence. I think he's going to be ready. I think it's just a matter of reps with regards to training camp and Todd Monken dialing up plays where, you're giving the ball to your outside, receiver. And then it's about your quarterback being like, all right, cool. I get it that you want me to go to Rashad Bateman. He's going to be the X receiver. Then let me get it to him. That's what happens when you got chemistry. If you show up, then the coordinator and the quarterback is going to feed you the rock. He's going to be just fine.
Yeah, I'm hoping it works out for him. I really, really do. It could be such a big part of this offense. But if we're talking about players who are ready for a bigger role, Q, there is no one who is more ready than Isaiah Likely. He is ready to step into the spotlight. He is ready to step into a massive role on this offense. We know he is ready. We know he is prepared. This now is just about how the Ravens decide to use him. Todd Monken and this year or two of his offense, like you talked about, we know that Mark Andrews can ball, one of the best tight ends in this league. We know that Isaiah Likely can be a very nice, almost like that Batman or Robin duo. Although, look, Isaiah Likely would be Batman on about 25 teams as opposed to where he is right now in Baltimore. It's a great luxury that the Ravens have. To me, though, Likely's ready. But again, it's just that question of how does Baltimore use him and Andrews on the field at the same time, because you cannot keep Likely on the bench as you have in years past here.
Yeah, he's not going to be on a bench in too many scenarios. And you're absolutely right. When you look at the bigger picture, it's what did he do last year when his number was called upon, and that's produce. And then you also look at what Mark Andrews has done and when he got hurt and came back and how he looked. He's 100% ready to go. You got a guy in Isaiah Likely who has real game reps. OTA practices, we saw glimpses of them both on the field, both making plays. I mean, this tight end group, probably the defensive back group, while we saw that TJ Tampa, I know we're going to get into it, had the pup list and all that. But outside of that group, this group, in my mind, might be the second strongest unit on the Ravens. And just, I know, defensive back is one thing. I know D-line is another thing. We just finished talking about that. But tight end, in my mind, top to bottom, might be the second strongest group behind the corners and safeties.
They do have young depth, and again, it's up to this young depth to be able to step up. But look, they have plenty of it. It's just a matter of who is ready and who is not. Coming up, though, we'll be talking about a training camp preview, getting one more name into who's ready for a bigger role and a lot more. So stay tuned. We got plenty to talk about here on the show. First, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And I know that a lot of times people tend to compare their lives to others, and social media certainly plays a part in that. And for me, when I get caught up in all that, I just think about what I do have. Comparison's a thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. And therapy has so many different benefits, whether it's learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries, empowering you to become the best version of yourself, and just for those who experience major trauma. It's for everyone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a free questionnaire to get a master licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. We are back. Our final segment, Locked On Ravens with Qadry Ismail. I am Kevin Ostrich, rounding out your Purple Friday. Might have a bonus episode tomorrow, depending on training camp, which is how the whole schedule thing goes. So to be determined on the bonus episode. But, right now with this Ravens team, excitement in the air with training camp just on the horizon. Now, Q, one more name I wanted to throw out there for you in terms of a guy who's ready for a bigger role. This is a coach and a guy you talked about. This is Zach Orr. I think Zach Orr is ready. Now, does that mean that it's all going to be smooth sailing and he's going to, this defense is going to take off and that's going to be it? Could happen. But there's also a realistic possibility that it's going to take some time for Zach Orr to fully acclimate to a defensive coordinator role. But what we do know is he was an incredible player for 3 years with the Ravens, has that experience. We also know that he's been with the organization in a coaching role for a while now, and he's been able to learn under some really, really great coaches. His linebacker group has been incredible. And I think, to me, there is a lot of worry about Mike Macdonald, who was a big loss. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat that any. Willie McDonald was big. But I do think the Ravens see some of McDonald in Orr. And I think that that's part of the reason they went internal with this, is because they know he can keep up the system that's worked so well for them. And while there might be a game here, like example, the Mike McDonald Miami game. Everybody, that's kind of the game where we all know was not a great McDonald game. He bounced back, and the rest is history. Maybe Orr will have one or two of those. That's to be expected for a young coordinator in his first play calling role. But I do think that Orr is ready to take on this challenge, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Here's the one thing, Kevin, I'll tell you about Zach Orr. The fact that he had the eyes and ears of all the players because of what he did on the field. And at the same time, giving those nuggets of information to guys to help them play better. I think the vibe that he has with Roquan is so critically important. But one of the things I think was overlooked with Mike McDonald's regime was the simple fact that you had a defensive staff that was like, yo, we're pressing these dudes to get the best out of themselves. Mike McDonald called the plays, but I think he also had a great staff around him. Look at the way the Carolina Panthers, look at the way the Miami Dolphins scooped up everybody. And I'm telling you right now, when it comes to Zach Orr, he too is going to rely upon his staff as well as be that guy that has that experience that is like, look, as a player, I know what these guys are going through. Let me get the best out of them. But you're right, play calling. You're going up against Andy Reid. You're going up against Patrick Mahomes. It's going to be a chess match. You know, Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, they're formidable. They've been to the playoffs countless numbers of times. They've seen defensive coordinators and different variety of looks. At the same time, you also look at your division. Mike Tomlin, his defense, they're going to be challenging in their own right as far as what they're going to do with their multiple looks. How is it going to be? I'm not saying that Justin Fields is going to be on the field at the same time of Russell Wilson, but maybe week 1 we might see Russell Wilson. Maybe week 2 we're going to see, or the latter part of the year, the second game we're going to see Justin Fields. Zach Orr recognizes that there's going to be challenges before him, but I believe that he is poised and ready to go out there and face them.
I think so too, and I think he's ready and prepared for it as well, and it's going to be exciting. Again, you can't overstate the loss of Mike McDonald. It was very big, but in my opinion, Zach Orr is a guy that can come in and hopefully fill in effectively. Now, in terms of a training camp preview, there are so many different positional battles we can look at here, and there are a couple that I think I'm really intrigued to look at. The offensive line obviously being the main one, where 3 starters gone. You got to be able to fill those voids somehow. Now, I think the projected line as it stands currently is Roger Rosengarten at right tackle, and then you have Andrew Voorhees at left guard, and then I think right now it's Ben Cleveland at right guard, but obviously those are all subject to change, particularly that right guard competition, where I'm intrigued to see if Ben Cleveland can hold on to that one, because I do think that a guy like Josh Jones, a guy like Saleh, there are some competition guys there that you could maybe make a case for, but that offensive line is so key, and that battle is what I'm really looking forward to watching.
It really is. I think it's everything. I mean, here we are talking about Zach Orr. We talked about the D-line, all of the different position battles and guys that are going to step up. None of it matters. None of it matters if you do not have a solid, strong offensive line. Rashad Bateman will not get nowhere near the production that we know he can get if you don't have a strong offensive line. As much as I love King Henry, one of the things that people talk about with him is like, you don't want to get him started. He's like the juggernaut. Once he gets going, he's hard to bring down. But if you can't get to that second level, it nullifies everything. You tackle him, you make him go east and west as opposed to north and south because there's no holes to run through, you're screwed. So, yes, the offensive line is everything. You talked about Roger Rosengarten. I think Andrew Voorhees, Daniel Faalele, Ben Cleveland, all those guys. Like, it's interesting because, when you were looking at John Harbaugh talk about OTAs and minicamps, he was kind of muted on the offensive line because it's about physical play. I mean, it's like putting on the pads and hitting other guys. And so you really don't know what you have until it's live bullets. And I think this training camp is going to be one of the most important training camps in Ravens history when it comes to offensive line play.
Yeah, establishing a tone, trying to get guys ready to play, and getting chemistry on that line to me is so important. We've seen years where the Ravens, they are cycling guys in and out of the lineup in training camp due to injuries here and other things there, and they just can't get into a rhythm. For me, chemistry is such a big part of that offensive line, playing off of one another, and you have to be able to try to roll out the same five as best as you can, which again is essentially why we talked about that rotation they had last year towards the end of the season. Sure, it was great to help Ronnie Stanley out in terms of getting some pressure off of him and getting him some rest, but there's just no continuity there. And that was one of the concerning things to me with that. Now, other positional battles I'm looking forward to, Q. I mean, the wide receiver battle, not that there's necessarily one for the number one spot. We know that Zay Flowers, and we know Bateman's going to get opportunities, but we talked about Tez Walker last week in terms of just his role could continue to increase and increase and increase if he continues to have a strong showing. Obviously, that third safety spot is another one that people are looking at with our Darius Washington, Bo Braid, Sanusi Kane, and them not signing anybody at the time of this recording, at least. Cornerback depth-wise, you got TJ Tampa, and you got guys like Jalen Armour Davis and Pepe Williams, and even you talk about at the edge rush position, Malik Ham is going to be competing for a spot. And you have other guys as well who are going to be exciting too. So there are a lot of storylines this training camp, and I think, not only one of the most important training camps in history, Q, in terms of just offensive line, but I'll even one up you and say maybe one of the most important Ravens training camp in history is because of all the young guys they have and how really important it is to establish momentum there.
The thing is, when you got a franchise quarterback in today's age and it eats up a lot of your salary cap, you better draft well. And when it is time for those dudes to step up and be available, mother of pearl, you're just like, okay, David Ajabo. Okay, Roger Rosengard. Come on now, TJ Tampa. Here we go, Nate Wiggins. Man, you are like Tavius Robinson. Come on, bro. Come on now. Pound to the people, Mike Ham. All those dudes, all of them. Like, Zay, your rookie deal. Keep on going well. Hey, Isaiah. Woo, boy, you had a great year last year. What you going to do this year for an encore? All of it. It all matters because, yeah, you got big money in one spot. And rightly so. Not even debating that. But you got the reality of it all is like, Eric DeCosta's like, I got a young team. They're good. Come on now. Hey, we recognize there are other teams that we're going to be playing that got some veteran QBs, but we got to be ready to go out there and do our best. And I think that this team, training camp is going to decide a lot. And that's where the fun of it all is going to begin.
Yeah, and especially as you talked about with the pads coming on eventually. Obviously, we're not there yet, but once the pads come on, we're going to be able to tell a lot about this core and what these young guys have to offer. Now, finally, Q, I did want to talk to you a bit about Jacoby Jones because obviously his passing hit the Ravens community hard, the NFL world hard, and obviously you being able to spend time with him and just know him. Jacoby was a player that obviously embraced Baltimore from the start, and the city embraced him right back. And to be able to, be the catalyst of winning that Super Bowl. I mean, the Super Bowl does not happen without Jacoby, but none of that is really important in the grand scheme of who Jacoby was as a person in terms of just his ability to light up a room and crack jokes and his community impact that he had, how he cared about, his coaching gigs and giving back. And I just wanted to give you the floor to get your thoughts on him, who he was, and just remembering his legacy.
What the biggest thing I thought with Jacoby was the fact that he brought so much joy to others, and he made others feel important when they were around him. And that's a rare quality to have as a human. As a football player, he had so much speed, and yet he channeled that speed into big play capabilities, whether he was with the Houston Texans, the Baltimore Ravens, or even the Pittsburgh Steelers. He just, clutch, big play threat. And one of the things for me personally, we were on a Ravens fan cruise together, and I took my daughter and my son with me. And as we were, on a boat talking about, getting ready for camp and doing our thing as training wise, he was like, yo, Q, have me, take me through a workout. And I utilized that time to let my son come in and work out with us. And it was really awesome and special because, Qadry was feeling like he was 10 feet tall. Man, I'm working out with Jacoby Jones. Jacoby took him under his wing as little brother. And he just really, really just, cherished that time. And always, hey, Dad, Jacoby followed me on social media. Hey, Dad, I saw Jacoby, when Jacoby, literally, he and I would go to other Raven events together and doing them. Man, one of the things out of his mouth was, man, how's your son doing? And he was really interested in knowing how Qadry was doing. So, just a rare individual who, I'm sad to see him not here, but even his family not to have him around. It really is heartbreaking, and we're going to miss him.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to remember Jacoby as a person and his legacy and all the joy that he brought. So, Q, thank you for sharing. I really do appreciate that. And, we'll remember Jacoby for who he was. Obviously, we know as a football player, but even more so importantly, is a person. So that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Appreciate everybody for tuning into the show. Training camp tomorrow. We will maybe be back with a bonus episode. Not exactly sure yet. But, Q, please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on here.
Yeah, it's missiletraining.com, where you can find me from an opportunity to get better movement and understanding of your movement, sports performance, and human performance and human movement. Missiletraining.com is where you can find me at and get in contact with me. At the same time, I am happy to announce that WJZ and I are going to be continuing our partnership, and you'll see me on all the purple shows that we air and the pregame, and it's going to be a blast to have some new content on that platform. But every week, it is all about Kevin Allstriker and I as we get in on our Locked On Ravens podcast, and we break it all down. And I'm glad the regular season is here. I survived another off season. It was easy to survive because I got a partner in Kevin Allstriker who kicks butt, take names later. But at the same time, we appreciate you guys tuning in and checking us out.
I always appreciate you, Q. And for the links to Q's work in the description down below. And of course, you can catch him here on Locked On Ravens, as he said, each and every single week. So, Q, appreciate you as always. Thanks so much for hopping on again. And thank you, everybody out there, for tuning into Locked On Ravens today. Again, not so sure on a bonus episode tomorrow. I'm saying it's about 50-50. So be sure to stay tuned to see if there is one. If there is, I will see you right back here tomorrow. And if not, I will see you right back here on Monday on Locked On Ravens.